Welcome back to Empower Her. I'm Priya, and I have a guest who has literally reviewed over 500 gig economy platforms, so you don't have to. Kathy Kristof is an award winning financial journalist and the founder of SideHustle.com. And she's here to cut through the noise on what actually works when it comes to building a side hustle and what to run far away from. Whether you're just exploring your options or ready to make your first dollar outside of your 9 to 5, this one's for you. Let's dive in. Hi, welcome to Empower Her. My name is Priya. I'm your host. And if you're listening for the first time, Empower Her is a podcast about women empowerment, financial empowerment, and women who are especially trying to transition from a professional career into maybe entrepreneurship or also multiple income streams through side hustles. And that's why today I have a very special guest with me today, Kathy Kristof. Hi, Kathy. How are you?
Hi, Priya. Great to see you.
So, Kathy is an award winning journalist. She specializes in consumer and financial reporting. She has launched SideHustle.com in April of 2018, mainly because she discovered that the gig economy lacked independent oversight. So they research, review, and rate more than 500 online platforms that help freelancers make more money. So today I have her here to, ask her questions about, what she has discovered through her own experience, what advice she has for women trying to make more money, so we'll get into it. But before we do that, Kathy, can you give a little bit more background about yourself to the audience?
Well, I've been a financial journalist really my entire career. I started out writing about banks and savings and loans when they were failing at record rates, then started writing about insurance companies right before the biggest insurance company in the US failed and left people with huge losses. And I've just kind of consistently moved my career toward where there was kind of a consumer disaster looming. Um, and I don't know why, but I always just gravitate to that. And then when this huge gig economy started coming, into its own, I was writing personal finance and had been for quite some time. And I was encouraged by the fact that, oh gosh, it for years, if you didn't do the right things when you were young, when you were old, you were just basically out of luck. There was
Mhm.
really not a lot you could do to make up for that lost time. And I saw this huge side hustle economy as being this opportunity to um, make up for what you didn't do when you were younger. Like somehow you could fix your finances with these gig companies. But then the more I looked into it, the more I realized that there was huge risks with a lot of these companies. A lot of these companies were surviving on churn, and that was a people churn. They would pull in people with lies. It would take everybody 2 or 3 months, maybe 6 months, to realize that was never going to happen. What they promised was never going to happen. And then they would drop out and they would pull in more people with lies and then they drop out. But in the meantime, those people who were brought in with those lies wasted all that time and all that money and put all sorts of assets at risk. And I just felt like there needed to be a consumer reports
Mhm.
for this, big and rapidly growing segment of the economy. And so I just decided to start Side Hustle. So there you go. My
Amazing.
career in a nutshell.
Amazing. Yeah, for me, in 20 back in 2018, I can't even say that, side hustle was, anywhere near my mind. But I'm glad that you started that, because obviously, like, now it's so much more prevalent than before. So anything that can help people navigate around, like, side hustles, and what to do, what not to do, so that really helps them a lot. um, so as far as side hustle, when we talk about that, um, w- for anyone who maybe hasn't even started looking into it yet, what would you recommend? How do they start looking into it?
Well, I mean, you start with the things that you like, the things that you're good at, and also maybe with a goal. So, is your goal to pay off a debt? Is your goal to uh, deal with some immediate emergency, car repair, like whatever? Or is your goal a longer term goal that you want to have a side hustle that you can stick with? Um, all of those things would lead you to different activities. You know,
Mhm,
some of them, I mean, Uber and Lyft, we don't really recommend,
mhm,
but for people who have an immediate term need, sometimes
mhm,
they're good. I actually chatted with a Uber driver who said that the reason why he was driving, and he was driving like, or he had a full time job and then he drove and he worked essentially 16-hour days. And the
mhm,
reason why I was doing it was because he and his wife were buying a house. And it turned out the closing costs were $4,000 more than he had.
mhm,
And so he was in kind of an emergency situation. It was something he could start immediately. He could immediately start making money, and he did. And so
mhm,
that is a perfect reason to take what I consider to be a pretty rotten side hustle. But if
mhm,
you're in it for a longer term, now you start looking at your interest, skills, and resources. And now you start looking at things that you would like to do, whether it's art, whether it's animal care, whether it's, anything. I mean, there's really so many options. I
mhm,
mean, as you mentioned, we research, review, and rate more than 500 different online platforms that are
mhm,
there to help you make money. And
mhm,
what's unique about these is you do not have to have your own idea. You don't have to market it. You don't have to,
mhm,
like
mhm,
um, y- y- that work is done for you.
mhm,
You just come in and you participate by using your time uh, to do this thing. And for somebody who wants to get started, it's a really easy entry point. Now,
mhm,
you can use that entry point and say, okay, now I'm going to go to the next level and I'm going to make this side hustle into a small business and I'm going to dump the platform. I'm going to go on my own, perfectly legit. As long but you find out whether, hey, is this an activity that I want to keep with? And
mhm,
so everybody's journey in that kind of is different. We have a quiz on our website that
mhm,
is a way to kind of put yourself in a category. You answer questions about whether you want to work or rent something that you own or sell something that you own. And then it will lead you down a path to find different side hustles that you might find interesting and
mhm,
appropriate for you. But yeah, I mean, it's really, it's a self-discovery thing. You need to decide what works for you because, again, it's going to be about what your goals are.
mhm. Yeah, even for me personally as well, I've been, like, navigating different kind of like side hustles on the side to kind of see, like, which ones work the best. And yeah, I mean, I've been lucky in certain terms that I was able to like find certain ones which I liked. It might not be, like, I would say, like, consistent money, but still some like extra money to put on the side. But something that I've noticed when I was, like, researching and doing things on my own too, is a lot of these platforms are, I mean, they have a monopoly in like their own kind of industry. So that sometimes can, I think, you know be something that's like negative for the consumer, because you don't really have a lot of options, right? So even for, let's say, um, whether it's like, dog sitting, right? Like Rover is the most popular one, or whether it's, as you said, Uber. So Uber is like the most popular one. There's also Lyft, but I would say like Uber has like majority of the market. And that's why a lot of these platforms can have like certain predatory kind of conditions, right? Which sometimes a lot of people don't really have an option, and they go into it, right? And they can't really negotiate how things are with these platforms, because if if you have a lot of option, then you get some kind of power to kind of say like, okay, if you're not giving me a good deal, I can switch over to another competitor. But that's not really how things are. So that's kind of like unfortunate, where I found myself like, okay, yeah, I don't really like certain things, but yeah, what option do I have? So
Now,
yeah.
which platforms have you tried? And you said you liked a few of them, so tell me
Yeah.
about those.
Yeah, I think Rover is quite good. I
Rover's
find
good.
that, yeah. So I've been using Rover for like over 2 years now, and yeah, I
And
like
what do
that.
you earn with Rover?
I mean, I wouldn't say a lot. Maybe like in the whole year, I'm able to like maybe do between like 700 to $800.
Oh, wow, in a whole year. And
Yeah.
now are you trying to do it a lot, or are you doing, because I consistently hear from people that they can earn 500 to $1,000, but it may be availability, or it may be that they're doing overnight sitting and you just want
Mhm.
to do dog walking. Tell me, what are you doing with Rover that
Yeah, I mean, I actually started with having pets at my home, because I was living in a different apartment before where pets were allowed. So I was able to like have pets at my home, which made things a lot easier because don't have to go anywhere. I don't have the headache of
right?
like, taking everything with me and, going to someone else's place. But then I had to move to another apartment. So there basically I wasn't able to like have pets at my home. So then I would like, go to other people's home. But obviously like it has advantages and disadvantages, because you have to obviously like travel to another place, you have to take everything with you, you have to manage groceries on your own, and then take everything with you, which is kind of like, sometimes I find that a little bit of a hassle, because obviously you at your home you have your own kind of things, right? You don't realize it until you go to someone else's place. So yeah, I have to do that. And then obviously if I'm like working a full-time job, then I have to like manage how I'm gonna take care of the pets. And if I'm working a part-time job, then I can manage certain things or not. So according to that, I have to like see if the pet is, do they require something like, oh, like they need like 24/7 someone to like look after them, or are they like okay on their own for a couple of hours. So that's kind of like, there's certain limitations obviously. So that's why it's kind of like a little bit difficult, unless you're totally available. Then yeah, it's a different ball game, you have much more options. But if you're working another job, then it kind of like becomes difficult as well.
Right,
So
right.
yeah, but yeah, overall I would say my experience has been good, because yeah, I'm happy with the amounts that I'm making for now. And yeah, the commission Rover takes isn't, I wouldn't say it's too much. So yeah, and if you have like consistent clients, like repeat clients, it helps, because then you kind of know like, okay, I'm getting predictable income from someone. So yeah.
Yeah, Rover is one of my favorite of the side
Mhm.
hustle platforms, and one
Mhm.
of the reasons why I like it so much is you build up a profile and reviews on Rover,
Mhm.
but you can take that show on the road. And we've talked to a number of people who started with Rover, built up a reputation, and then built up repeat clients.
Mm,
And at some point, those people stop going through Rover, and then you don't have the commission. You
mm,
also have dealt with them for a long period of time, so you know they're going to pay you.
mm,
And so it's a good launching pad again
mm,
for doing your own thing, but it
mm,
definitely works better if you
mm.
have your own house and your own yard.
Yeah.
And so, those are the sorts of considerations you have to be looking at with the side hustle. I mean,
Mm,
there is a whole category of side hustles that really only work for homeowners, and
mm,
some of these are you can rent out your house and yard to
mm,
film producers and
mm,
photographers for by the hour. I've
mm,
done this myself a few times, and it really sounds like it's too good to be true, but
mm,
in one day, for instance, I earned $1,400
mm,
renting out my house to a guy who was doing a commercial, and it
mm,
was so much fun,
mm.
because, you have all these, actors and actresses. In this case, it was a bunch of, kind of millennial influencers, and
Oh,
they were
wow.
just fun people to hang around with, and
Mm,
when I rent out my house, I am there, and I'm,
mm,
the person on site to solve problems, but also make sure that my house is, like, fine
mm,
at the end of it, and, but that doesn't work when you're in an apartment because you generally don't have the ability to kind of
mm,
sublet your apartment,
mm,
on your own. There's
mm,
another one called Swimply that you just rent out your swimming pool by the hour.
mm,
You rent out your yard as a dog park by the hour.
mm,
There's so many things, but these
mm,
are all they're homeowner things. And so if you're not
mm,
a homeowner, if that's not one of your assets, you
mm,
don't go down that road. And
mm,
what you were talking about too with competition. Again, one of the reasons why I started side hustle is I realized that a lot of the best side hustles were the ones that people didn't know about necessarily.
mm,
Um, and like Gigster, which is the one that I rented my house out through, and
mm,
Peerspace does the same thing. These
mm,
are extremely lucrative, but have you
mm,
ever heard of them before? No, but there's thousands of side hustles out there. We're just, hitting the
mm,
surface, and every
mm,
week we find more, and we're small, we're a small company, small staff. We're doing it as fast as we can. But the reality is there's so much more out there than most people know.
mm,
And when you start to do the research and you realize, hey, if you want to go into marketing, I
mm,
think we've got 10 or 20 marketing companies reviewed and researched and rated.
mm,
And there's in person marketing, there's online marketing, there's social media marketing, there's all these different segments of it. And
mm,
you can do any one or all of those.
mm,
And it, by and large, I'm going to tell you that all of those platforms are things that you probably have never heard of. And
mm,
so this is an opportunity when you're saying, hey, whatever I'm doing is not working that well for me, go back, go to our site, go by topic and
mm,
see what else is out there. Look for the highly rated ones,
mm,
obviously, because
mm,
the low rated ones,
mm.
there's something seriously wrong with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll tell you in our review what it is, but
Mm,
in any event, if you want to save yourself time, just look for the ones that have 3 or 4 or 5
mm,
ratings, and you'll find some pretty good options.
mhm, mhm, exactly. Um, yeah, and as far as when we were talking earlier a little bit about some of these platforms who are like low rated, or you might not have a good experience with them, with your research, what are you would say is like some of the red flags that people should look for when they're looking into a platform or a side hustle?
There's so many red flags, and there's so many, and the ones that are most important depend on what the side hustle is. So, one of the ones where you're renting out assets like a house or a car or a motorhome, the place where you really need to look for red flags is their insurance,
Mm,
because something bad could happen on your property and you could be liable for it. And so you need to really make sure that there's not some, you don't earn $50 renting something out and then it costs you $250 in
Mm,
liability, right? And
mm,
so that's where you would look for asset-based ones. With a lot of the work-based ones, the two biggest red flags that I see are sites that require you to do a bunch of work that is unpaid. And
mm,
sometimes it's necessary training
mm,
for the job you're doing, and they don't
mm,
pay you for it. And that
mm,
sometimes could take weeks. Like,
mm,
you're going to work for weeks and not get paid for it? I mean, come on. And a lot of the AI platforms that you're supposedly training
mm,
artificial intelligence, they do this all the time. Like they're going to train you.
mm,
And sometimes the training takes longer than your actual job. So you get 3 hours of training for 1 hour of work. And for the 1 hour of work, you get $20. So
mm,
what is your real hourly rate? It's,
mm,
you don't
mm,
even want to think about it, right?
mm,
So that's where I look at there. There are also a bunch of platforms that you earn money, but it's not really yours until you cash it out. And they
mm.
won't let you cash it out until you have a certain amount of money. And
Oh,
we've found several of these platforms will kick you off the platform when you're that close to cashing out your $150 or whatever. Yeah, and so those are the sorts of things where, I mean, we have a rating system of 1 to 5. Those are the companies get a 1 because
mm,
we want you to avoid them at all costs.
yeah.
We don't have a 0 rating. So, yeah, so if a platform has a 1 rating, it means
Mm,
either they pay you almost nothing for your time or
mm,
they have some catch in how they
mm,
do it, which
mm,
may be that, they will abscond with your earnings. And
mm,
in some cases, they trick you into putting your own money in order to supposedly earn money. Yeah,
mm,
so any of these deceptive practices, you have to just kind of look for. And the way
mm,
we look for them, frankly, is we do heavy research on every company that we rate.
mm,
And part of that is we read the terms and conditions. And the
mm,
terms and conditions are essentially the contract
mm,
between you, the user, and the platform that you're using.
mm,
And so these are really long, complicated
mm,
legal contracts.
mm,
And if you don't, if the platform isn't rated on our site and you don't want to call me and see if, I can take a look at it, um, you have to read the terms and conditions. And then what we do also is compare those terms to real live users' experiences to see if the red flags that we found in the terms are playing out in real life.
mm,
And many times they are. I mean, as you probably know, there are a lot of fake reviews out there.
mm,
And a lot of companies pay people to, you know,
yeah.
pretend that this is a great platform.
Mm,
Well, with enough experience, you kind of learn,
mm,
what is a real review and what isn't. But
mm,
one of the things that we look for is, are the things that we see in the terms, are people talking about those in the reviews? And
mm,
and when they are, then we know, okay, these are real. This is actually somebody who's used this platform. They actually know what's going on.
mm.
And when it's just like, oh, it's awesome, it's like we're like, oh, yeah, okay, you know,
Yeah, exactly.
not believing that one. Nope.
No, that's true. Yeah. I think like some of the platforms that I have come across are also some things that I've used myself in the past. So, for example, I think it's called Task Rabbit. Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I've used them a couple of times for like different things, like assembling furniture or those kind of things as well. But yeah, I thought like those were also like great side hustles to do because yeah, you get paid by the hour, and then you can use very like basic skills if you can do them And yeah, so I think that was also a really good platform. I haven't used it myself to like generate income, but I've just used their services a couple of times. So yeah.
Yeah, TaskRabbit is also highly rated on our site for freelancers. I mean,
Mhm,
and a lot of the sites that we rate highly have kind of certain things in common. And one of them with TaskRabbit, with Fiverr, with Rover, with Wyzant, these are all platforms where you go on, you set up a profile, and you set your own rates. So
mhm,
you know what, percentage they're going to take for their marketing and for bringing customers to you, but you decide how much I expect to get for my time, and
mhm,
you will get the amount you set. If you know they're going to take a 20% fee, then you raise your rates by 20% so that the rate you want to get is covered, right?
mhm,
And yeah, those sites are all excellent. And again, we hear from freelancers all the time with all those sites that they can make really good money.
mhm,
The downside of them is that there a lot of freelancers there. You
mhm,
have to differentiate yourself in
mhm,
some way. And
mhm,
whether that's because you have great experience, it's because you have great reviews. Some people cut their rates in the beginning in order to get the great reviews.
mhm,
But you have to find a way to stand out in a crowd. And that is really with those four sites the only downside we see with using them, but I think that's a pretty minor downside, and all of them really can help you launch an independent um, business on your own.
mhm. Yeah, I would say the same thing. That's the kind of like downside I see, especially now that I've been using Rover for a couple of years. Is obviously, as you build up your reputation and good reviews, you want to charge people a bit more of your time, but then also you have a lot of competition because there's other people on there who are charging maybe a little bit lower.
Right.
And that kind of makes it tough because everyone's like setting their own rates. So yeah, but yeah, that's like a minor downside, I would say. uh,
Yeah, and I mean, I think that one of the things you need to do on those sites is you need to find something that is not rate related that
mm,
makes you stand out. For
mhm,
instance,
exactly.
this guy that I chatted with numerous times who made Rover into really his full-time business, and he earns um, a nice five-figure income, like 60, $70,000 a year, just
Mm,
watching people's dogs. And he started out by marketing himself through veterinarians' offices and travel agencies, leaving
mm,
a card with all these people saying, recommend me, da, 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 So that helped him get business outside of just being on Rover. And
mm,
that was a great start and it got him some reviews. He did charge low rates in the beginning, but
mm,
then what he started doing is offering ancillary services. Do you need me to pick up your dog? Oh, do you want to know when this other dog that your dog gets along with is going to be at my house? Do you want to do a doggy daycare? And do you want, and he would promise, okay, your dog's always going to get a walk. Like whatever the thing was that differentiated himself. And now, he doesn't have to cut his rates. He doesn't have to do anything. He says he goes on vacation a couple months every
mm,
year, and he's still making this very nice annual income. And he no longer needs to market through Rover because he's got all of these clients who come to him directly.
mhm, mhm. So besides Rover, what would be the other, you would say, like, top two platforms that, you've seen are the best ones to make
Oh,
some?
wow. There's so many. Do you want to do a category and just say, like the best in work ones and general work ones, marketing ones?
Mhm.
I,
Let's do one category of, let's say, marketing.
Okay. Oh gosh. There are several in marketing that are really great. There's Marketer Hire, there's Maple, there's Growtel. All of those essentially let you set your own rates or for either hourly or by project. A lot of them work on a project basis, but they all work really well. There's an in-person marketing platform called Field Day, which I really like. They pay you by the hour. It's usually $25, $35 an hour. And that's like where you're going to a mall, or, you're going out in the world and you're handing out leaflets, or you're telling people about a new business, for instance, and they'll train you. And they pay you for the training, importantly. And they'll, typically the job will be, say, 10 or 15 hours that they, need you to work in advance. They'll tell you, and specific things that you're going to need to do. But overall, that gig is going to net you, several $100s from
Mm,
start to finish, and you have a timeline that you need
mm,
to do it in. But otherwise, your timing is pretty flexible. So
mm,
I really love that.
mm,
So yeah, I like all of those
mm,
platforms.
mm,
And then I also like Fiverr, which is a much broader platform.
mm,
And what makes them unique is you go on there and you say what you do,
mm,
and you get very granular about,
mm,
okay, I'm going to do email marketing for you. I'm going to send out 500 emails to market your business, and we're going to pick the top, you know, 100 companies that you want to reach, or whatever it is, and
mm,
that service is going to cost you XYZ, right?
mm,
And
mm,
you, as the freelancer, you say what you're doing, you say what it costs,
mm,
um, and people decide whether or not to buy that service from you.
mm,
And that eliminates the bidding on a project. Like, if somebody reads your profile and they say, "Yeah, this sounds good to me," they buy your service, they put the money down, and
mm,
then you just provide the service. The
mm,
marketing is really completely done, and that it contrasts with, say, Upwork, where you have to bid on every project.
mm, mm,
And you have to have bid credits to bid on
mm,
every project. So sometimes
mm.
that costs you money.
Yeah,
And so, comparatively, wow, Fiverr is so
Fiverr
much
is
more,
much better.
right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I've also used Fiverr as well. So, um, yeah, with that, I've also seen like some benefits, but obviously, like it's you have to be very specific to your niche, and very specific with your skills.
Yep.
And yeah, from my own experience, I would say like you have to. It takes a little bit of time to build your profile,
Oh,
um,
absolutely.
but
Yeah.
yeah, but you have to be very specific and granular with your
Yep.
skills, because yeah, there's a lot of competition on there too. So yeah.
Yeah. Thousands of people that you're competing with. But,
Mm,
like, once you kind of get your profile just right, and you've had enough customers to review you and say why you're special, it, like I said, that can be a really long-term, amazing side hustle platform. Again, you're paying 20% of whatever you earn, which, 20% seems like a lot. But on the other hand, when you don't have to do all this other stuff to market yourself, you don't have to do the billing, you don't have to worry
mm,
about bad debts. I mean, that I look at that and I think, yeah, that's probably worth 20%.
yeah,
At least it would
yeah,
be to me. And so, and you can price your services
yeah.
with that in mind too. So there's
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, the good thing with another thing that I wanted to mention with Rover and Fiverr is also you can, get tips, and tips are
Yeah.
100% yours.
Yep.
So another thing that I say is to a client is like I'll charge a little bit less, but then I would say if you really like my services, then you can tip me, because 100% of that would go to me. So
Mhm.
that's kind of like another way to kind of navigate the whole how you're getting paid too. So I really like that as well with both Fiverr and Rover. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They're both good about that, about encouraging people to tip. And I
Mhm.
do think that matters.
Exactly. Um, so when it comes to obviously starting to earn all these side incomes, is there, from your research, is there like an average timeline you've seen when someone starts any of these side hustles, on when they can start to see a little bit money coming in?
Yeah, I mean, again, it depends on the type of side hustle
Mhm.
because a an Uber or Lyft, DoorDash, Grubhub, all the ones that you've heard a lot about, you can earn money immediately. I mean, boom, tomorrow. Once you get approved on the platform, you're
Mhm.
good to go. The other ones that frankly are the better side hustles, the better long-term side hustles like, Rover and TaskRabbit and Fiverr and Wyzant, whatever, those take you a little longer to get established. And I would generally say you should figure it's going to take you 3 months to 9 months to start really seeing some momentum. And the short side would be if you're in a market where there's good demand and you have something already that makes you stand out. You have real experience in there. For instance, Fiverr has a pro program. So if, say, I wanted to be a freelance writer on Fiverr, I wouldn't go into Fiverr and just in the general population. I would go and I would ask Fiverr to evaluate me as a pro, and then if they approve me in the pro program, then I have access to all of their business clients. I have a note on my profile saying that I'm a pro. They encourage you to charge more. They do all, so it immediately makes you stand out. And so you can actually skip the line that way, but you have to have the experience to make that work, right? And so if you have the experience to make that work, then again, the time frame is compressed. But if you don't, if you're just getting started, it's like anything else, you get your first client, that's the hardest one. Then the second client is the second hardest one. But then after a while, you get recommendations from those people, and now it's like a snowball rolling downhill, and you it begin to have a momentum that is almost hard to stop. I mean, I've talked to people on Fiverr who started earning a lot of money to the point where they're like, I couldn't just do it by myself anymore. I had to hire
Mhm.
people to, do my Fiverr because
Mhm.
I got a lot of clients, I had constant
Mhm.
clients, and so that's a great problem to have.
Mhm. Mhm. No, you're
Yeah,
totally. I think when I used TaskRabbit, I saw that happening because I hired someone on there, and it seemed like they had a team. So he sent someone from his team to manage that task, and I
yeah,
was like, "Oh, okay, this guy must be, getting a lot of clients, and that's why,
yeah.
it's a team that they're working in." Um, so taking a little bit of a pivot here, how has it been different for you, from like, a journalist to now, obviously working on sidehustle.com. How has it been for you to kind of like transition from that to that?
Oh, terrifying. Going from somebody paying you to you, like, whatever money you make is all based on, how well you do your job, how will you market it, how you're the CEO, the CFO, the chief marketing officer, the chief technical officer. And one day when we'd just done this huge and expensive site redesign,
Mhm.
and um, the site went offline. I mean, it was just
Mhm.
gone.
Mhm.
And I almost had a heart attack. I mean, like
Mhm.
the amount of time, the amount of money, like it was insane.
Mhm.
And it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and I don't know why I was awake at 2 o'clock. Probably because we were going live with this huge thing.
Mhm.
And, oh, like I'm desperately calling my, server and, like, what's going on? And,
Mhm.
and thankfully within a couple hours, everything was fine. But yeah, that's the sort of thing that happens when you run your own business. Um, you know, whether it runs is all up to you. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Mhm. Mhm.
terrifying.
Mhm. It is. It is. And also, I saw that you've also written a book called Investing 101.
Yes.
And, uh, someone who hasn't invested so far, and they want to start investing, what would you say is step number one for them?
Yeah, I mean, I don't usually tout my own stuff, but I'm going to tell you, buy that book. If you're trying to get started, first of all, it's a really easy read.
Mm,
Um, Secondly, there is nothing in there that is going to be hard for you to understand. It's very straightforward. I give you the simplest ways to go. And investing, the simplest way to go is actually the best way to go.
mm,
And so that doesn't mean a money market account, but it
mm,
means like putting your money in assets that are appropriate for your goals. So your long-term assets need to go in stocks,
mm,
period.
mm,
End of story.
mm,
And the best stocks are index funds. And
mm,
so uh, I personally have my money divided among like the Vanguard Total Market Index Fund, the Vanguard Total Market International Index Fund, and
mm,
a couple of other ones that are similar.
mm,
Um, but that's all you need to do. You
mm,
don't, really, you need to have a certain amount of money set aside for near-term goals, emergencies, and near-term goals. You need to have a certain amount of money set aside for, like if you're planning to buy a house within the next 10 years, and this is not money you want to have fluctuate in value a lot, and particularly not toward the end. A certain amount there. But then your long-term goals, it's really easy. You just put it in these index
mm,
funds. You forget about it for a couple of decades. You will
mm,
be shocked at how much money you accumulate, especially if you're smart enough to just contribute to those funds regularly, which you can do through automatic investments.
mm,
So incredibly, incredibly easy. But what we do with, or what I've done with that Investing 101 book is I explain why you
mm,
put your money in these different categories. So you actually understand, yes, the market's going to do this over a short period of time, but over a long period of time, it actually, you wouldn't even see those deviations. I mean, we've just had this big market drop because of oil prices and
mm,
Iran, right?
mm,
And then today, uh, prices went way up. If
mm,
you had just not looked from the beginning of the year till now, you would have no idea that there was ever a drop in the market. It would just be like, oh, I'm doing pretty well,
mm, mm, mm.
the,
Exactly. Yeah.
the end of story, right? And
Mm,
that's one of the things that you need to do when you start investing is you need to stop looking at things that are for long-term goals
mm,
and pay more attention to your life and to, um, getting the money invested in the first place.
mm,
And then we have, or I have worksheets in
mm,
there to give you a realistic idea of how much you need to save today to get the nest egg you want tomorrow.
mm,
And, just, and get you to think through a few things.
mm,
Um, I, Even though it's not exactly investing, I talk a little bit about the things that you invest for versus the things that you insure for.
mm,
And that, is kind of an important thing to keep in mind because a lot of people, one of the investing mistakes that they make is they put too much money into savings
mm,
because really they're trying to ensure that they don't have a loss in
mm,
these particular things. But normally, a big loss that you can't recover from easily, that's what you get insurance for. That's why you have auto insurance. That's why you have home insurance. That's why you have health insurance. It's not for the day to day doctor's visit, it's for cancer. That's what you need the insurance for. And
mm,
so that I go through that with the book with little worksheets. And so if you need that sort of help, to get started on that journey,
mm.
then go out and find the book. You can get it used. It's like a couple of dollars. I mean, I don't really make any money on the I mean, they still send me royalties, but, it's
Mhm,
not like this is not a life-altering amount of
mhm,
money. I
mhm,
don't really care. Get at the library, and
mhm,
Xerox the pages you need to do worksheets on, I don't care, but it can definitely help you get started, and
mhm,
once you get started, honestly, you'll realize how incredibly easy it is,
mhm,
and once you understand how to do the math and how to, like, look at
mhm,
market corrections,
mhm,
you it takes all the worry out of it,
mhm,
and to me, that's the whole point because you should not be spending your life worrying about investing. You should be spending your life with your friends and your family
mhm,
and doing the things that give you joy.
mhm,
And that's the whole point of just kind of get that on, auto play and then just live the rest of your life, enjoy the rest of your life because that is not something your money is not something you should worry about. It should be a tool that helps you get the things that you want.
Um, when it comes to investing mistakes, obviously you mentioned one of them. Are there any others on top of your mind that you've
Um,
seen?
yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest mistake I see people making is not understanding why they're in the investments that they're in. And if you don't understand why you're in those investments, then there's a good chance you're going to get out of those investments at the exact wrong time. And so I think that really there's some basic education you need to do when you start investing. And part of it is just understanding what are the right investments for different goals because you should only be investing for goals and the goal can be I want to have kids, I want to buy a house, I want to buy a car, I want to like whatever it is, or it could just be something amorphous like I want financial freedom.
Mhm,
And to be honest, that was probably my top goal my entire
mhm,
life
mhm,
was I don't want to be tied to a job. I don't want to ever feel like, "Oh, I hate the people I'm working with. I hate what I'm doing, but
mhm,
I'm trapped."
mhm,
And so that is what I invested for, and I gotta tell you, it's the most freeing, thing you could ever do is have the money available for you so that it's go to hell money, It's just like,
mhm,
I I don't have to work for you money, and, um, I've on occasion used that, like, just to say, "Oh, wow, these are the terms under which I work, and if
mhm,
they don't work for you,
mhm,
I'm gone," and all of a sudden, those terms were more acceptable to me. It's
mhm,
like,
mhm.
"Okay."
Yeah.
Weird how you changed your whole strategy when I
Yes.
said, "Okay, I'm gone." But yeah, but you have to have really truly the ability to walk away, and
Mm,
I do think that that is, I when you look through your financial goals,
mhm,
keep that one in mind
mhm,
because I would say really for almost everybody, it's one of the most important goals to have is have that freedom.
mhm,
And you might want to exercise that freedom because you have a baby and you are not comfortable with your daycare situation or whatever.
mhm,
For whatever reason you want that freedom, you might want to travel. Whatever the reason,
mhm,
it, it's an amazing thing to have.
mhm,
It is the financial wherewithal to just it, have the time to regroup and
mhm,
leave. You know.
mhm. Exactly. Yeah. No, that's true. Um, yeah, I feel like when it comes to, money, we usually don't relate it to freedom. I mean, obviously, we've started talking about financial freedom a lot now, but basically like when since I grew up, I never related money in my mind to freedom until like a couple of years back. So you slowly realize like, how it gives you freedom in a lot of situations, as you said, like in a job, it may be, in another circumstances as well. You maybe want to move from like one city to another. So yeah, that's why it's kind of like important to have that like financial education and literacy, and books are, really great with that. Like personally for me as well, like I kind of like educated myself on, personal finances by reading books. So whatever your go-to is, I'll say like do those things, like whether it's, books or podcasts or, any other resource that you can find. Obviously, like now we're lucky to have so many resources.
Yeah.
We have like YouTube, we have so many things out there which are for free. So yeah, definitely use them.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. The next question was basically about you have obviously covered the gig economy. What's your perspective on like labor laws and how it relates to the gig economy? Because obviously there've been a lot of, changes and policies and suggestions, and things have changed a little bit, but obviously there's like a lot of questions around how people are treated by, different kind of platforms, because a lot of these times they are not really treated as, employees. They're like considered like partners or, consultants or whatever. So
Independent contractors is the term of art.
yeah.
So, um, almost all of the online platforms that want you to work with them classify you as an independent contractor, and that means you work for yourself. You
Mm,
don't work for them. That means you are not covered by any labor laws. You are not covered by minimum wage, overtime laws, child labor laws. There are no laws that
mm,
protect you. You are covered by contract law, and
mm,
that's the terms and conditions of the website that you're dealing with. And that is something I think people fundamentally misunderstand when they first get into this gig work, is they think that they have a protection that doesn't exist in this world. And so that's again why I felt there needed to be a consumer reports for side hustles, because people didn't realize the risks that they were taking. And so yeah, that we I've done a couple of stories about what makes you an independent contractor versus what makes you a employee. And some of these platforms, frankly, are on the tightrope between those two, and some of them, in my opinion, have flipped over to where they have so much control. You could argue absolutely that you are an employee, but the challenge is that is something that you cannot press that claim yourself. You
mm,
have to go through the Department of Labor. The Department of Labor has to investigate. A lot of times, what would happen is that the platform will change the terms a little bit so that they can get back under the line of being, letting their workers be independent contractors. It's a challenge, but for the most part, what you have to understand when you get into gig work is you are on your own.
mm,
You If you don't want to read the contract, don't read the contract, but no, if there's a risk, it's your risk, it's not their
mm,
risk. They're
mm,
not going to protect you. There
mm,
are a handful of platforms that actually do employ their workers,
mm,
and you are a W-2 employee. They take out taxes. They do that stuff, but it is, in the scheme of things, maybe 5%
mm,
tops of
mm,
these companies will actually make you an employee.
mm, mm. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's why it's kind of like important to kind of, do some research So another question that I had was about AI. Obviously, a lot of people are using AI now, ChatGPT to ask literally about everything. So I know a lot of people who will be going to ChatGPT to ask, oh, like, can you recommend what side hustle I should do, what platforms I should use? So, what do you think about that?
Unfortunately, AI is not only kind of useless in trying to find a decent side hustle because it tends to recommend the same side hustle platforms that you hear all about all the time. And it tends to say stuff like, oh, you could be a blogger and earn $10,000 a month. And, like I could be an astronaut too, and earn all sorts of money in a month. There's nothing practical about it. But the more significantly, we check out AI all the time to see how they describe different side hustle platforms that we're reviewing. And I find that AI is um, incredibly gullible. And
Mm,
so what you will see is they'll rate platforms that we think are terrible very highly because those
mm,
platforms buy fake reviews. And so you'll go, around and you'll see, like, oh, all these people say it's awesome. And so they'll say, the AI thing you're looking up, lug, some platform that you're thinking about working for. And it's, oh, they're great. Yeah, you earn all sorts of money. You can do this, you can do that. Well, that's from a host of fake reviews. If you actually go back and you deal with real people who are dealing with that platform, you find a very different story. But AI doesn't know how to differentiate the fake reviews from the real reviews. And so when you're looking for something, if you're trying to check out a platform, just be really skeptical with the AI reviews and see if you can find real reviews. Obviously, you can go to our platform and just use a search bar, try and find, have we reviewed it yet? What do we rate this platform? What do we tell you about the reviews? Because we actually look at the reviews. We look at whether it reflects what's in the terms and conditions. If it does not reflect what's in the terms and conditions, we are much more skeptical. And certainly we're skeptical of the it's great, it's wonderful, it's what, whatever, because again, that's the sort of stuff that AI picks up all the time, and it doesn't know, or it doesn't appear to know that
mm,
there's a whole fake review industry out there,
mm,
and the worst platforms are paying to get
mm,
those fake reviews so that they can do the churn through people.
mm,
They'll find out soon enough how bad it is, but for the
mm.
moment, we're just going to pull them in and get them to do stuff for us. And that's obviously not, you don't want to waste that kind of time.
Exactly. No, thank you so much for clarifying that because I know a lot of people who do use AI for this and they will think that, its suggestions are valid. So thank you for clarifying that.
Of course.
And as as you said, like, definitely check out your website because that's a really easy way for you to find out about those platforms instead of, like, it takes so much time for you to, actually go on the internet, research yourself. So I'm glad that you have the website where, people can go and check out, based on your research. So you've already done the work and all they need to do is, just, see what the score is and, what the reviews are. But I'm really glad that, you started this website because, people who are like me, who are like trying to navigate different things, they have a very helpful resource to check out. So definitely check out the website. I'll put the link in the description of the episode. And if you want to reach out and, talk to Kathy, you can definitely do that on LinkedIn as well. But I just want to say thank you again for coming on the podcast and sharing your experience and sharing your tips and advice for all the women out there who are trying to navigate the gig economy. And we will definitely follow all your advice. So thanks again for that.
Thanks, Priya. It was delightful to be with you.
Such a good conversation. I love that Kathy brings real, unbiased research to a space that honestly has a lot of hype. The gig economy has real opportunity in it, but only if you go in informed. Head to sidehustle.com to explore platforms that have actually been vetted. And if today's episode helped you out, share it with someone who's been thinking about starting their own side hustle. I'll catch you in the next episode.